Everybody, thanks for joining us. Okay, we got that. Recording is in progress. Thank you everyone for joining us. We appreciate you being here on Monday night as we are every Monday night here in the Michaels Community Classroom. And we have a special treat tonight because Kirsten is back and she is going to be teaching a faux watercolor technique tonight using FolkArt acrylic paint. So it's faux watercolor butterflies that she's teaching. As always, these classes are being recorded. So if you're having trouble with the pace or you feel like you'd just like to watch tonight and then go back and paint at your own pace later, you can always do that. And and Raina, of course, will be posting the links throughout the evening as to where to find them, but you go right back to the michaels.com/classes page, or also Michael's YouTube channel are two great places to see these recordings. So without further ado, we're going to get started. So let me introduce to you tonight, Kirsten.
Hey everyone, I'm so excited for tonight's class. So yeah, what John said, and I'm already sneaking peeks at everybody's comments, is we're calling it a watercolor class, but we're using FolkArt acrylic paint. So the same acrylic paint that you guys use for traditional acrylic painting, we are going to use for this beautiful watercolor effect. So we are using regular acrylic paints. I saw a few people ask that already in the chat. So the first thing I want to do is show you guys the supplies that I'm using for tonight's class. So tonight I'm painting on 2 canvases. So we have this cute little set after an hour. I always tell everybody in the classes, if you want to paint just one that's maybe bigger, if you want to paint one that's a little bit different in size, these happen to be 8 by 10, but if you have a 5 by 7 or 2 6 by 6s, any canvas works. What I always like to do when I'm teaching is really focus on a technique. So the technique, you're going to learn all of the ways that we applied the paint, how we add the details with the marker, how we blend color. So the size of your canvas is not super important if you're working on something different. So again, we're using FolkArt acrylic, and let me go over the palette with you guys. So I'm using this beautiful orange, Hot Saffron, this beautiful purple, Lavender, 2 teals, a light and a dark. One is Sky Blue and one is traditional teal. Then we've got black, and then I've got this bright pink, which is bright pink, and then this beautiful yellow, which is yellow ochre, and it looks a little dark, but just remember we're working with water, so all of these colors will look a little bit lighter, this beautiful pastel. Now the key to tonight's class, and this is what I love the most about tonight's class, is using something kind of non-traditional. Normally you would do watercolor on watercolor paper. It's super absorbent, and the paint does all these unique techniques because of the characteristics of watercolor paint. But we have discovered that using home decor chalk paint, which is a super, super matte finish, actually transforms these standard canvases into something that works like watercolor. So that is super exciting. That's really the key for tonight, is using an ultra matte chalk paint for our base coat. So those are the paints, those are the canvases, and then I am using this basic Craft Smart brush set. And when I call out the brushes that I'm using, if you guys don't have this exact brush set that was on the supplies, I just want to make sure that you guys, I usually use flat brushes. That's why I love this set. And I just want to make sure that you have a small, a medium, and a large flat brush. Again, these are a 1/2 inch, a 6, and a 10, but just make sure you have a small, medium, and a large.
So Kirsten, just let me interrupt you real quick, because I think a number of folks don't have the chalk paint for the base. So is that gonna be okay, or what should they do?
You're gonna get a different look. It's not going to be extremely different. The main thing that is going to happen is for people who haven't done watercolor before, when you do it traditionally on watercolor paper, the paper absorbs your paint right away. So it creates these beautiful lines. It creates kind of almost a place for your paint to stop. It allows these pastel colors to just kind of blend on their own. So you're going to have a lot of movement in your paint because your canvas is going to be a little bit more satin. So definitely do the class. You will have a beautiful painting. Your dry time will be a little bit longer, so you might have to go back, but these are recorded. You can go back after the class. You can watch this anytime. I would recommend though, if you have watercolor paper and you don't have chalk paint, I would do that instead of a canvas. But we'll get you through it no matter what. You'll have a beautiful result. Your paint will stay dry or stay wet a lot longer. Is that a little bit helpful?
I think so.
Okay. And then the other thing that you guys are going to need is just a thin Sharpie marker. This is just an ultra thin, but any black permanent marker will do. Now, you guys, I'm going to use a pencil because I want you guys to be able to see on the screen some of the techniques I'm doing, but I'll let you know when that is because I don't want you guys necessarily to use a pencil, because when we're doing watercolor, the neat thing is not to have a pattern on your canvas because your paint won't cover it up because it's so transparent. Okay, so you want to have, I called out on the supply list, you want to have 2 things of water. And the main thing for that is 1 for cleaning and 1 for watering down our acrylics. So that water will stay clean. Lots of paper towels tonight and something different, but any palette will work. A plate that is not paper, that's either ceramic or plastic. Just again, we're working with so much water and that'll just make your paint on your palette easier to use. Okay, so with that said, what I also thought was a great idea for tonight, we are doing 2 canvases, but what I'm thinking is I'm going to start with this canvas with the big butterfly. We're going to learn all of these techniques. We're going to get all the color on this, and then we're going to let this dry and we're going to move to our second canvas. So just for everybody that's on there, that is what we are going to do. We're going to do most of this one, and then we're going to move to the second one. Okay, so with that said, the first thing we are going to do, oh, and also on the supply list was a blow dryer. And the main reason we put a blow dryer on there is because in an hour, we want to have these beautiful paintings, and we're going to cheat to dry our canvases. So the first thing we're going to do is just base coat these canvases with our white chalk paint. And I'm going to use my largest flat brush, but use whatever brush is comfortable for you. And really, there's no right or wrong. You just want a really nice base coat, not too thick, not too thin. If a few areas aren't exactly even, that's okay. But you just want a really nice base coat on both canvases. And this again is just the home decor FolkArt chalk paint that has an ultra matte finish.
So Kirsten, would you want people to use just a regular white acrylic if they have it, or just let it be?
You know what? They could just let it be.
Okay.
Definitely could let it be.
Yeah.
And again, you're going to get beautiful results. The main thing is your paint is going to stay wet a little bit longer because your canvas is more of a satin finish.
Sure. And yes, for those who are talking about different size canvases, you totally can do that.
Oh, sure.
How about gesso? Kirsten?
You know what? I don't want to say because I think most gessos are a matte finish, but I don't think they are as matte as the chalk paint.
Okay.
But not knowing that for sure, I would almost just leave the canvas because it's a pretty matte finish. Great. Just a raw canvas from Michaels.
Okay.
So I would leave it as it is. Okay. So again, just a really thin, even coat on there on both canvases. And now while you guys are base coating, I am just going to hit this with the hair dryer because you want to make sure that it is completely dry before we get started with the watercolor. Any questions before I turn on the?
Nope, I think we're good so far.
Okay. All right, I think that it dries so quick. That's one of the great things about acrylic paints is whether the chalk paint or the regular FolkArt acrylic, they dry so quickly which allows you to have to complete so many techniques in just a short amount of time. All right, so any questions about that FolkArt chalk paint base coat? A great tip for just learning a new technique with FolkArt acrylics. All right. I just peeked at the screen, no pattern, question mark. No, we're not using a pattern. Two reasons. One reason is when you're working with watercolor, the paint is so transparent. So you don't want to have to concentrate on covering up the pattern. And I think someone taught me years ago that you learn the techniques better when you're not following a pattern, because it just allows you to kind of be more creative and not follow the lines of a pattern. So we're going to do this without a pattern, but it's going to be super fun and super awesome. Okay, so everybody ready? So what we're going to do first, okay, we are going to load. And when we're doing this technique, very, very, very little paint. Okay. And you know what? Hey, let me see. Okay, very, very little paint. Because what we're doing is we are mixing it with pretty much it's 2 parts water to 1 part acrylic paint. So what we're going to do is you can see this butterfly is very loose. It's falling off the edge. What I am going to do with a pencil is I am going to draw that so you guys can see it. But I'm just doing this for you guys. I'm going to draw the body, very light-handed, a straight line. And then I'm going to draw, oh, that pencil's not super sharp. I'm going to draw just very loose those big wings. And I'm mainly doing this again so you guys can see that. But what I want you guys to do, I hold that up. Can you guys see very lightly? Annie, I'm gonna have to say it. Is that okay? No, just, yeah. Okay, guys, a little technical difficulty, but not really. You guys, when I gave you the supply list, grab any color green from your paint bucket. I did not announce that, but I'm using classic green. So while we're doing our patterns, grab any green from your paint bucket. Okay, so I want you guys to see that pattern, but what I want you guys to do is apply that pattern with water only. So with water, instead of that pencil, wet the canvas where your butterfly will be. We've done this technique before, and if I hold the canvas just right, you guys can kind of see where that's wet. So that's how I want you guys to apply your pattern, with water only. So I'm wetting the area where the butterfly is. Not big puddles, but just almost like a watered down base coat. So now using that same flat brush, I'm using the number 10. I am going to wet the side of that orange saffron, and just create a watered down version of the FolkArt acrylic. And you can see, can you guys see my palette? You can see the great thing about FolkArt is you have the same beautiful color even after adding all of that water. It's same beautiful color. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get some of that yellow ochre. Also put a little bit of that on your palette. Clean and wet your brush and get a little bit of water onto the side of that paint, creating almost like a milk consistency, very watered down, but not so much water that you don't see that beautiful color. And then the last color is your bright pink. A very little dot. Clean that brush, get some clean water, and add water to that. Okay, so on your palette, you have an orange, a yellow, and a pink. Now here is where the magic is. And this is what I love about watercolor. Again, make sure that you have a good wet base coat, just where your butterfly will be. And then starting with the orange, just putting that mix of water and paint on your brush, you're just going to touch down on the outside edge of those butterfly wings and see how the paint is almost moving on its own. It's bleeding and creating all of those beautiful shadows, shading, and highlighting. I'm going to do that on the top and the bottom of the wings on both sides. But see where it just kind of works its way into that wet base coated area. I'm going to do a little bit on the bottom of the butterfly wings. You don't have a hard line like you would if you were just using traditional folk art. Cleaning my brush in between each color. And then I'm going to go into that yellow ochre, the part where I've already added water. And I'm just going to let that, it will automatically, see how it automatically is blending together. You're just placing the color, and because of the characteristics of watercolor, it's moving around for you and creating all of that beautiful shading. I'm going to clean my brush. And that's that beautiful bright pink. And down the center where that butterfly's body will be, I'm just adding the pink. But you can see it's bleeding and blending in with all the other colors. So you're base coating, but you're also letting the damp area of your base coat where you just base coated with water, you're letting that paint move on its own. More pink if you like pink. I like that the whole center, make sure you guys can see that. The whole center of the butterfly is that beautiful pink color. Always cleaning my brush in between. I'm going to let that yellow and that pink kind of work itself together. I love the orange, so I'm going to get a little bit of the orange to do the bottom of this guy's wing. Maybe a little bit of pink just to kind of accent and see how it blends with the orange. But see how you don't have any harsh lines. All of the colors blend together so beautifully. That's something that you can only get by using the watercolor technique. I want a little bit dark. Oh, go ahead, John. Sorry.
Which orange color are you using?
So this is that dark orange. It's called Hot Saffron.
Hot Saffron.
Really rich, beautiful orange. If you wanted to add like a few little details, you could add some dots, but know that those are going to bleed and blend and just be that really soft look. If you want a little darker color, this is less water, but still a watered down version. And I'm just going to outline still that wet base coated area, but just to get a different value of that same orange.
It seems like maybe people don't have that hot saffron. So how could they build? How could
you know what? Any orange would be beautiful. A pumpkin orange, a tangerine. There's so many different orange colors. And you know what I always want to say? If you want a purple and blue butterfly, whatever color palette is best for you, just use maybe 3 different colors, like a purple, a blue, and a teal would be gorgeous. Even a red, an orange, and a yellow. Hot saffron is really just a darker orange. So any orange that you have would be perfect.
Right. And then of course you can just mix your own as,
yeah.
I mean,
definitely.
The colors are not super critical here. I mean, as long as you have something that looks nice together, go ahead and mix up your own colors. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you get this beautiful blend of the different values. So then all I'm going to do is clean my brush. And down here on the bottom, I'm not going to outline the butterfly's wings. I'm not going to do a perfect square. See how it's just a very loose, almost like a scribble patch of green to represent the garden. So again, just with water, I want you guys to apply just random brush strokes, just filling up very loose the bottom section of the canvas. Very irregular edges, but just wetting that. And here's where sometimes if I get it right, the glare will show.
We can see it when the light catches it. Yep.
Yeah. So again, no rhyme or reason. You're not outlining your butterfly. You're not doing everything that's white. You're just doing a little area down there with water, just wetting the canvas. And then using the green, which again, you guys, I'm sorry, I didn't call that out in the beginning, but just a basic green. Again, the littlest amount. I'm going to get the water and mix water with the FolkArt green. And then just like we did on the wings, I'm just going to touch down. Like that's always the easiest way to show it. See how you touch down, which that would be a brush stroke with traditional acrylics, but that paint just moves and grabs where you have base coated with plain water. That's one of my favorite things about working with watercolors is you've got so much control once you learn the techniques, but you still have the creativity to allow the paint to kind of do its own thing. So I'm just filling that in and just letting that paint kind of move around on the canvas. If you overlap the same watered down paint over an area that you've already done, you'll get a little darker value. You want that beautiful canvas texture to show through, but you're just representing what would be a cute little wildflower garden. Okay. So you've got your butterfly. Now make sure you guys, if you have any big areas that are maybe holding a little bit more water than you want, it'll all be damp, but if you have big areas, I've got an area there that's holding a little more water. And again, this is only because we're a 1-hour class. Get a little bit of that water off with the corner of a paper towel. I've got a little bit there, but not too much, because it will still dry really quick, just like a traditional acrylic paint does. But you just want to make sure that you've got at least enough time for that to dry. Okay, so that's canvas one. What we're going to do is we are going to scoot that over. Any questions, John, while that one is drying?
Well, someone was asking if these would work with metallic paints. So,
oh,
yeah,
it absolutely would. So the metallics break down a little bit different because the pigmentation in the metallic is what gives it that beautiful sheen. So you'll almost get maybe like more of a pearlized look than a hard metallic, but you'll get that beautiful, the feel of a metallic. It'll just be a little bit softer like a pearl.
Sure. Might be fun to experiment and just see what you get. Yeah,
it would be beautiful. Any of the FolkArt acrylics, you can do this watercolor technique with. So what we're going to do for this, again, techniques that we've already done, we are going to do the green area just with water. And I am just going to wet, creating my pattern. I'm going to randomly brush stroke. I'm going to do one tall section just to have kind of a stem or a spot for that butterfly to sit, but not wetting the entire canvas. Let's see if I can get the light to kind of show you. That's the pretty much the maximum type of pattern that we're going to work with tonight. And it's just water. Can you guys see that? If it catches the light.
Yeah, Kirsten, just for folks who are still trying to catch up on the last one, can you maybe put that in the upper right of some
Absolutely.
your,
Let's
wherever,
see.
just so
Yep.
that maybe if you move the paints out of the way,
I sure can.
that
Maybe
way
right
yeah.
there.
Yep.
You guys see it?
Yeah. Great.
Okay, perfect.
And guys, she's trying to get done in an hour, so she does have to go pretty fast, but you can always, as Raina is just putting in there, you can always go back and catch up later and follow the recording, and that way you can do this at your pace.
Yeah. And no, this is really just like our base coat. So don't try to match mine exactly. If your green is different, if your colors are different, this is just a really good base coat to learn the techniques. And we'll get to this as the last step. So I base coated this area very loose and random with water only. And then using the same watered down FolkArt green, I'm just going to touch in different areas. And you'll see how that paint's moving just like it did on the previous canvas. You don't want to color it in. You want to just put some random strokes and then allow that paint to move around. And you know what? If a little paint gets on an area where maybe you don't have that watered down base coat, that's okay. It'll just give you another layer of green, another shade and another value. But there's no harsh lines or harsh edges when you're doing that watercolor technique. And then what we're going to do is just like we did here, we are going to base coat these two butterflies just with water. But what I will do is I'm going to do it with a pencil just so you guys can see the shape. So what I always like to do is start with the body, and he's just a straight line. And then if you see his wing is just like almost like a piece of pizza. If this is the center of the pizza, it's kind of a big triangle and then a curved edge at the bottom. So that's your butterfly. That will be his body, and that will be the side of his wing. And then same with this little guy up here. Straight line, that represents his body. And then you're just drawing his little wing. Okay, so don't apply a pattern. What you are going to do for your pattern is you are going to do that just with water.
So a couple of folks were asking about whether they want the base coat to be damp. So you'll remember that Kirsten had dried it completely, and then before you paint a section, she goes ahead and puts the water on at that point.
Right. The base coat is the chalk paint, and that has to be completely dry. You're right, John. Perfect.
Yeah. And because some folks were asking about if they base coat tonight and they go back tomorrow. So that's totally fine that your base coat is completely dry. And then before you paint a section, you just start with plain water like Kirsten's showing right now.
Absolutely. The water is just you're base coating your area that you're working with water.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I'm going to rotate my palette. I'm going to put a little bit of that light lavender on my plate, a little bit of this teal. I've already got the orange and I've already got the pink. I'm going to do a little bit more pink. Okay. And then same thing that we did with our first canvas. I'm going to add water to that paint, mixing that up onto the side of that little blob of paint, cleaning my brush, doing the same thing with the teal, just creating that watercolor consistency. You still have those beautiful colors even after adding water. Same with the pink. Then cleaning off your brush every time. With these transparent colors, it's easy for them to mix and bleed. So that's why we want to clean our brush every time. So I'm going to start with this little butterfly right here. Make sure my area where I'm going to paint is still wet with just plain water. And I'm going to pick up just that purple and starting where his little body meets his wing, I'm just going to brush that out from where his body will be. And again, you can see how it just softens it automatically. I'm going to get a little bit of that beautiful bright pink mixed with the water. And I'm just going to touch that right on the edge of the purple. It's blending a little bit with the purple there. It's fading into that light pink. I'm going to clean my brush and get a little bit of that same orange that we used for our other canvas. See how that's running together? It's blending with the pink. It's going and stopping where your water base coat stops. That's one of the things. Once you get this technique down, where you apply the water, your paint will stop. So you really have so much control once you practice this technique. I love the pink, so I'm going to kind of mix those together a little bit. Blend them a little. I want a little bit darker purple, so I might just add 1 or 2 more strokes. Maybe a little pink towards the top of the wing. But really just allow that to just be the colors that you love the most. If you love the purple better, do more of the wing in purple. If you wanted yellow instead of orange, absolutely do that. But just letting the paint kind of do what it wants to do. Okay, and then we've got this little guy up here. He's base coated with the plain water. Making sure mine was drying a little bit just because of these bright lights. Let's see if I can wiggle that. My water's pink, just pink a little, so you might be able to see that base coat. And the same thing, I'm going to touch into that teal blue mixed with water. And I'm just going to touch on the areas where his little body, remember his little body's right there. Like that's perfect. Can you guys see where the same color has all those different values? And that's just how it's reacting to the wet base coat. I'm going to clean that brush and add a little bit of purple to the outside edge of his wings. But it blends just beautifully on there. So really, you just got a really soft base coat. Okay, same thing, guys. I want to make sure I've got a few areas because I tried to wet it really good for you guys to see it. A few areas that are holding a little too much water. I'm going to get that off and add a little bit more color. So I'm going to go back and add that purple. I just removed some of that water. And a little bit of that blue. That teal is so beautiful. That's one of my favorite colors. How's it going, John? Any questions?
No, I mean, we've been answering them as we go. So I think everybody is in good shape.
Okay, so now we really have the very, very simple base coat of our 2 canvases. And now all I'm going to do is that beautiful dark yellow ochre. If you've still got it on your palette, I'm going to do what we've been doing and just mix that with some water. I'm actually not going to wet my canvas, but all I'm going to do is in the areas, let's start with this one. In the areas where you want just a little touch of a wildflower, I'm going to just circle. Now, the more water you add, the lighter the color. And I'm just going to not do a perfect circle. not spounce like maybe Donna Dewberry would, but almost the combo of the two. A few C strokes, a few little dots, but you're just adding the softest touch of yellow to a few areas of your little garden. View these as stems. So just kind of place a little bit of yellow. And you can see this is a different technique. We didn't base coat the area with water, so our paint didn't run too much. It kind of sat still in the areas that we placed it. We're going to do the same thing on our second canvas. I'm going to do a little bit of yellow up here where the butterfly will almost be sitting on the flower. A little bit down here, but not perfect circles. You're pouncing a little bit with your chisel, and you're just doing some very loose random strokes. But with that yellow ochre watered down, just like we've been doing for all of the colors.
So Kirsten, someone was asking, could you do this same technique if you base coated on, let's say, a canvas bag or something like that? Could you, if you put the chalk paint on, could you do this technique?
Now, you know, the neat thing, that's so funny, because last time I taught this technique, someone asked about canvas. We have got a TikTok, and I'm not good at knowing where to find it, but it's a plaid TikTok on our plaid page. And we are doing this exact same technique on a canvas bag, and you skip the FolkArt chalk paint completely. You just wet the canvas, and it is so much fun. So your paint bleeds the same, you get the same watercolor look, the same transparency on fabric, and it's so much fun. So we have a TikTok on our plaid TikTok page. So look for that, and we'll try to post it. But it is a super fun technique.
But essentially, because the canvas is absorbent in its own right, you don't really need the chalk paint.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. You just wet the canvas. So you're working on a wet tote bag, not soaked, but just wet. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Doreen, she had covered that earlier. It would be better to use chalk paint. And if you don't have chalk paint, you know, you just use the traditional canvas without the acrylic.
Yeah.
Base.
And I bet everyone that's doing that is getting a beautiful, I hope they're getting a beautiful finish. It's maybe just wet a little bit longer, and maybe it's not as matte, but you're getting a beautiful result, I hope.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to a little bit larger flat brush, but again, use whatever you're comfortable with. This is a 1/2 inch flat brush. And all I'm going to do is, again, with water, I am going to base coat very random edges. So the edge, everywhere you see blue. I don't want you guys to outline all your flowers. I don't want you to outline your butterfly. I want you to keep that white space, but I want you to base coat, again, just with water, all the areas that you want to be that blue, beautiful sky. I'm just going to kind of hug this side of the garden, but not exactly touching the green. I'm going to do a little bit between his little wing, a little bit up here, leaving some white space though. I think that's what gives you so much character and depth. A little bit down here, maybe a little bit separating the garden from the butterfly's body, but not a perfect edge, random strokes and only water. Again, let's see if I wiggle that right. Maybe you guys can see it a little bit. Oh, where I see it, I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but maybe you can see the glare. Okay, so then we've got the teal that we've used, and then we've got this lighter teal, which is sky blue. If you only have one teal, it's going to be perfect. It'll be as beautiful. Adding water to the FolkArt paint, just like we've done with all of our colors. And I am just touching that down on the wet base coat. And this is the lighter teal or the sky blue. Not too much water where you drown the canvas, but wet paint and wet canvas. I'm going to clean my brush and I'm going to pick up a little bit of that dark teal, again, mixed with water. And I'm going to touch that on there and you'll see how they'll just kind of find their way to each other. And they'll blend all on their own. Going down the side. A little bit of that sky blue, a little bit more. You don't want to wash them together so it becomes one color, but you just kind of want to do loose strokes next to each other so that they've got room to move and touch each other. But you can see how you get all those different values and you still have that white space, which just makes it really unique. The neat thing about watercolor is as it dries, so many parts of the canvas actually changes. Like you can see where this orange is drying, it's creating that beautiful pattern. That's just one of the things that as watercolor dries, it just creates all those different looks. Let me get a little bit more of that dark teal up there. And a little bit of that sky blue. But just letting those colors mix together. Okay, I'm going to scoot him right there so you guys can still see him. I'm going to bring the sample in of the second canvas. I'm going to clean my brush and do the exact same technique with water only, just wetting just a few random areas around the butterfly, a little bit over here where the taller flower is. Maybe the littlest bit up here above his wing. In this open area down here. But very irregular edges. That's what gives you such a beautiful look. Okay, wiggle him a little. So you guys can see your pattern is the area that's wet on your canvas. And then the exact same thing that we did. I'm going to start with that sky blue and just touch in a few areas. A little bit above his wing. Let me hold that up. Can you guys see? It's a really light, beautiful blue. But you can see where it just kind of goes until the water stops and then it creates that beautiful line. A little bit more water to my teal. And adding that to certain areas. More of the light blue. You can always add just a little bit of plain water to move the paint around. You can add a little bit of the light blue. If your base coat is not as wet, it will still dry traditionally like acrylic paint does, which is much quicker than other paints. You just want to move that so your entire canvas, you don't have any harsh edges or harsh solid areas, which is what you would do with traditional acrylic painting. So I love those white spaces. Again, make every painting that we teach you guys, make it your own. If you want more or less sky, make it your own. But I love where the white areas separate the painting from the canvas. Okay, guys, so what we're going to do, and this is another something we just have to do because it's the 1 hour. I am going to hit this with a blow dryer. And the only key to this is don't put your blow dryer too close because of all the moisture on your canvas. It'll kind of fan it out. So you just want to stay above your canvas. But if you're ready now, dry it with a hair dryer so we can do all of the fun details on a dry canvas. Before I do that, John, does anybody have any questions?
No, I mean, I think we're doing good.
Doing good?
Yeah, a lot of people are saying that theirs is coming together and looking nice. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'm going to hit mine with the blow dryer because again, we want to work on a dry, we want our base coat to be dry. Okay, I think it's totally dry. So only a few more techniques that I want to show you guys. So we learned watercolor, we learned wetting and applying our pattern with water, letting the paint move. The fun thing about this is actually getting that beautiful pen and ink look. So what we are going to do is we are going to do the pen and ink. We're going to do the Sharpie. And then at the very end, I'm going to show you guys how to just add these final little details, maybe the body, the antennas, these little splatter marks that just really give a unique look to your watercolor technique. Okay, so really the only tip that I have when using a Sharpie is I want you guys not to view it as a brush, but view it as maybe you're on the phone and you're just doodling. I don't want you to outline. I don't want you to create a perfect pattern. You're almost sketching and accenting. You're not outlining. You're not creating perfect circles. You can see on there, they're just really loose. They're not exactly in order. They're not the same on both wings because the watercolor base coat that we applied is so loose. You want to be as creative with the permanent marker. So what I'm going to do first, knowing that we will go back in and do the body, the areas that you see, let's start on the flowers. So the areas that are yellow, what I like to do is just create a really loose circle. And then a little one in between. So you're almost doing like a little spiral, a few little strokes. This area is smaller, so they're just going to be a little smaller doodle. A few little swirls, but you notice, let's see if I can hold that up. I'm not outlining the yellow area exactly. I'm just kind of going over and next to those yellow areas. That little area is yellow. Over here, I've got a few little areas that would represent flowers. And then the green is really just an area. So what I want you guys to do is really have fun. A few stems, a few leaves, but anywhere in there, not creating an exact pattern, but just doodling. Like I'm going to put that guy on a stem and then doodle a little leaf. Each leaf is different. Maybe this little bushel of yellow, I'll put on a few different stems. The marker can overlap the white area, the blue area, but you're just creating what was once just a green base coat. Now you're creating some detail. Make a stem for him. Maybe that, because it's a bigger area of green. Maybe a few little areas that look like grass. Maybe the ground or the base of your garden. But very loose. Just have a really fun time with it. And then you're going to do the same thing on your other canvas. You know what? I'll do this so you guys can always see what we're doing. For now, we're just focusing on the garden. The garden is the easiest place to start because I don't want you to be intimidated, and there is no way to make that garden anything but perfect. Little swirls, little dots, little scribbles in the areas that are yellow to represent your flowers. And then same thing, I'm going to create a long stem on this guy. And you can see my watercolor area, the green, it is not individual leaves, but the leaves look so cute on there just because it all comes together because of the color. I'm going to put these two little flowers over here on long stems. Maybe make a little grouping of leaves. But you're just doodling and having fun with it. But the two techniques together are just so beautiful. A few stems for these yellow ones. So you've got your cute little garden. And now we're going to move on to our butterfly. So I'm not going to do the body. We're going to do that in paint. But I am just going to kind of doodle where the wing meets the white. Again, not a perfect outline. Almost like you're sketching. Maybe a few little dots. Not exact, not perfect. I'm going to come down here. Maybe he's got a big dot on that part of his wing. Maybe I'll define the edge of his bottom wing a little bit different. A little bit of a jagged edge. Almost just sketching. A few lines maybe. Remember, the body will be there. We'll do that last. But just a few lines just to give him some definition. Very little pressure, just really light on the marker. And just doodling around his little wings. I'm going to do the same thing with this little guy. We've got our garden. Knowing that his body's right there, we're going to do that with paint. I'm just going to kind of lightly scribble. Not exactly, but just allowing him to kind of pop off the canvas a little bit more. A few little lines, the details of his wing. Maybe a dot or two to give him some detail. Could do some solid dots. That's always really pretty. The dark black against the really soft color. His body's going to be right there. So I'm just going to sketch and doodle around his wings, some on the white, some on the color. Some of the details on his wing. Maybe I'll define maybe a stronger line to separate what could possibly be his back wing from his front wing. Add a little dot to it, but not perfect circles. Okay, so you've got some details on your butterfly. You've got some beautiful details on your garden. And now that we're done with that, we're going to just do the finishing touches. So I am going to put a little bit of black, FolkArt black on my palette. And again, just the tiniest amount. And I am going to get my little round brush. I think this is a #1 round. And I'm going to wet my brush, but I don't want him to be super wet. And I am going to add a little water to the FolkArt, but not as much as we did before. More of a wet brush than half water, half paint. And then we'll start with this guy. And I'm just going to, using my brush, I'm going to do a circle for his head. And then I'm just going to wiggle and pull at the end. Wiggle and pull up onto the tip at the end to create that body. Everything is so loose. That's why you don't want to outline and create a body that's perfect. You just want to almost sweep and scrape and then lift at the end. Same with this little guy up here. I'm going to do a little round head. Make sure you have enough water in your brush so that your paint moves. And then I'm just going to wiggle and lift at the end, almost like you're scrubbing and then you're pulling up. And then getting a little bit more water. This time you're actually mixing the black acrylic with the water. I'm going to add some of these details right over the marker. But what that's doing is it's just giving you a thin black line that you already did, and then a thicker black line, just to give you some of this detail. So water mixed with the black FolkArt, and just accenting a few of those areas. If you like the way the black kind of makes your butterfly pop off the canvas, add a little bit more. If you like it really soft and these beautiful pastels, add a little bit less. I always love, for some reason, I always love black in my paintings. So I'll add a little bit more. You can put a little bit in your dots, but you're just using FolkArt watered down like a watercolor. Using that same paint, I'm going to do 2 little antennas on both little butterflies, putting a little dot at the end. And then something that's fun, if you want to do it, I love where the black is not perfect. So just adding just plain water to my brush, I'm just going to wet that body just a little and let that black paint bleed where it wants to. Not too much, and this is just plain water. I just don't want to have any harsh edges because I want everything to be that really soft look. All right, we're going to do the same thing with our second canvas. Let me put that there for you guys to see it. So here's where his little body would be. That same round brush, a little bit of water, not as much at first. We're going to do a circle for his head. And then we're just going to scrub. You don't want to, after doing all this loose, soft color, you don't want to create like a little bubble body. So you just want to scrub down the center and lift at the end. Same thing, 2 little antennas, 2 little dots on the end, and then add some detail. With the detail, you want a little bit more water in your black because you want it to still look transparent, like a watercolor paint. I'm just going to add a few dots with just the paint this time. I don't have any with the marker, so I'm just going to add some details right over that black Sharpie. Some of those veins that come out where his body and his wings meet. You've already got him with the marker, but just a little bit more detail by doing it with the brush. Nope. A few more dots, kind of work around those. And then like I did, I am going to just add water and kind of wet next to his body. And again, just let the paint move to soften the edge of his little body. I'm going to add a few more little dots, maybe up here on his wings. So you've got, with between the marker and then the paint used as a watercolor, you've got grays, you've got rich blacks, you've just got so much dimension that lets him pop off the canvas. And then just a very simple technique. Andy does it, Donna does it. Some people call it fly specking, some people call it splattering, but it's so perfect for watercolor. So using that flat brush that we used in the beginning, I'm going to use a number 10. So for example here, and pick whatever color you like best. I'm going to water down some of that dark aqua. Now here, the only trick to this is you want the watercolor, the watered down folk art in your brush, but you don't want it dripping out of your brush. So load your brush, but then tap it on your paper towel. And the way I like to splatter the best is I take a dry clean brush, and then I take my brush loaded with paint and I hold it at the very end and I just tap it. And what that does is it just gives you a really controlled splatter. So I'm doing the blue just in different areas. Oh, that was perfect. So see where you've got the watercolor base coat and then you splatter some of that same color and it just gives you that beautiful detail. So I'm doing a little bit of the teal, a little bit on the wing because that butterfly's got that beautiful teal in them. Then I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to get a little bit of the green, again, mixed with the water. Tap it on my paper towel so it's not too much. If you have too much, you'll get really big splatters. But then I'm just going to tap over that little garden area. And it's just like adding details, just really soft specks of color over your watercolor areas. And then I'm going to clean that same brush and I'm going to get a little bit of this dark orange, this hot saffron, mixing it with water the same way that we did, you guys, for our base coats, for our butterfly wings. Tapping it on the paper towel so it's not too much paint in that brush and tapping really close to those areas on the butterfly wing that are orange. And here is a great example. So let's see if I can get you guys to see that. See where the orange is on the orange, but it's also on the blue, but it's still so clean and such a beautiful color. That's just a really fun way to create layers on your painting. You don't have to keep the orange in the orange area. Let it kind of go into the colors around it. Focusing on the orange area, but where it goes out a little bit into the sky is so beautiful. I'm going to do it one more color. I'm going to mix water with that beautiful bright pink. Get a little bit off on the paper towel. And then just focus tapping on that area, but being super confident if it gets into the other areas because it's really beautiful. I'm going to set him up here and I'm going to get more of that pink. I'm going to tap that on the center of that little butterfly, over the black, over the pink. But you guys can see, like, that's a great place to show where the water, the black, it's staying a very clean, beautiful color, but it's just giving you a really unique look. So, John, do we have any questions? I think we're almost at the end.
I think we are. I mean, everybody, particularly towards the end here, once you started with the marker, was very excited. Everyone is loving how this came out and what a great technique and how fun it is. So,
oh, yay.
Yes, everyone's loving this. And then now they're anxious to see what next week's painting is, which it's going to be you again, correct?
It is. And I hope that's good. So next week is going to be this. It's kind of big. Should I do this?
No, I think straight ahead was good.
Straight ahead.
Yep.
So we are doing, and I don't know if this is the real name, but an abstract houseplant, kind of to roll from summer into fall. And this, again, I love techniques, guys, and I hope you guys love learning techniques that then you can go and paint a million different canvases with. So we are going to be doing this beautiful background, which is simply a credit card or an old gift card or a spatula or a scraper, and then creating all of this just using that tool. We're actually not using brushes at all next week. All of this is with a gift card or a piece of a gift card cut up and creating all of this. So a really fun abstract for next week.
Wow, that's exciting. And I know a couple of people have been asking Andy's sunflower class that was postponed from last week. I believe we'll be getting rescheduled. So just keep checking the website, Michael's website. And when it comes up there, you will know it.
Perfect. So you guys, please hashtag these to Plaid Crafts and to Michael's. We love to see what you guys have painted. That's really the favorite thing for me. I love to see everything that you guys have done. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's class, and we'll see you next Monday.
See you, everybody.
Bye.